Hello, and if you were with us earlier, welcome back to Oschersleben and our enhanced, expanded coverage of this weekend's TCR Europe race meeting. It is rounds 9 and 10 this weekend of the series, and rounds 9 and 10 of 14 in total. We are into the second half of the season, and if you were with us earlier, you will have seen Santiago Urrutia set the quickest time in Free Practice 1. It is, though, Free Practice, lots of tyre situations and all sorts of setups going on, so we don't quite know what to take of things, but potentially some pointers as to what's going to happen the rest of the weekend. A half-hour session ahead of us. It's Mark James in the commentary box as per usual, but joining me for our live coverage of these two free practice sessions from Touring Car Times is Neil Hudson. Neil, you're very welcome once again.
Hiya, good afternoon.
So, we now know a few more of the stories that emerged from Free Practice 1. We did say towards the end of the session that we thought that Josh Files had we thought that Josh Files had gone out, had a quick look at the circuit to check that it was where he thought it was, and then parked it up. But apparently he did have a problem.
Yeah, no, it seems he's knocked the subframe slightly out of alignment at some point on the circuit, so it looks like he's going to have a little bit of trouble. He says they've not got time to fix it between FP2, so they're just going to have to live with it for this session, but they'll work on it overnight, and then they should have a rider's rain car tomorrow is the plan.
Well, he did say it was going through the chicane at turn 9 that he felt the car bottom out, and immediately the car didn't feel right, he said. So told the team, took it back in, they discovered the problem, and he said it was wrecking the front left tyre. And so this session, as you say, it's going to be not quite damage limitation, but it's not going to be an easy run for Files, but then he's got plenty of experience here. Let's face it, it's target competition. They can pretty much do no wrong at the moment. They are a very good team, very good at setting the car up, and so all should be back to normal for qualifying tomorrow.
Yeah, and obviously they've got the other 4 cars worth of data to work with, so should be all fine there, really. So
yeah, quite. So normal service then. Josh Files, of course, our championship leader, coming here to the second German race weekend of the TCR Europe season. What else can we tell you? Well, if you weren't with us earlier, you may not be aware that we have a few changes to the personnel that we'll be seeing this weekend. A total of 28 cars. I think you saw 29 on the draft entry list that we just showed you, but a very late withdrawal yesterday. John Filippi in the Renault Megane, sadly, so there will be no Renaults here this weekend, and it would appear that Alex Morgan's decision to switch away from the Renault Megane to the Cupra, in which he finished 3rd in Red Bull Ring 3 weeks ago, was absolutely the right one. It would appear that that car needs more development work.
yeah, it's got some time ahead of it, I suppose. It's had a rough start to the year, and Alex's results in the Red Bull Ring were quite exceptional for him. So I think it really helped his confidence, I suppose, really, after a torrid start to the year for him in the Wolf Power Run car. And Vukovic Motorsport, who run and build the Renault, are running John Philippe's, and it looks like they've made the same decision to go do some more work on the car.
Yes, it's Mike Halder's car that he's running. Alex Morgan. They've rented it for, I think it's an open-ended hire, so they could well appear in the Renault again before the end of the year, but Alex, I think, was saying that he had sponsor commitments and so forth to honour, and so it was an easy decision to move to a competitive car, and I think the aim ultimately is to move back to the Megane once the development work has been sorted out. So we are moments away from the start of Free Practice 2. We will, I dare say, see some of the new drivers, the 3 new entries, or the changes, should I say, that we're seeing in this session. Oh, Gilles Magnus, we didn't mention him. He also had a problem in FP1.
Yeah, similar to Josh, he hit one of the curves. This is his first time here in the Come To You Racing Audi. So the Come To You boss was saying, yeah, they've had to sort out the suspension, basically knocked the front wheel. So they've fixed that, repaired that, and he's ready to go.
Ah, right, okay. So Gilles Magnus, who, of course, was a race winner earlier in the year, is back to fighting fitness. Tom Coronel, P2 in FP1, and at one stage towards the end of the session, it looked as though it was going to be Honda's 1 and 2, and then it was Santiago Urrutia, to the delight of our Uruguay fans. That's at the quickest time right at the end of the session. So the Audi quickest, then 2 Hondas, and then a whole gaggle of Hyundais, which we were kind of expecting, weren't we?
Yeah, and it sort of follows on exactly what we saw in Red Bull Ring. Hyundai are they showing their hand? We can't really tell till qualifying, as you know. So it's sort of we'll see what happens in practice. But it looks like it's Honda and Audi and Volkswagen up there. Of course, Gianni Morbidelli was quick too. It's the Peugeots, I suppose, are the ones that probably would be a little bit worried after their FP1 performance.
But you wonder, because of the situation with the balance of performance and everything else, then obviously the weight went on after the third round. And so we didn't see a Julien Brichet race 2 victory last time out at the Red Bull Ring. But you wonder if they have a torrid time this weekend, and it would appear that that's what's likely to happen. That weight should, in theory, come off, or at least some of it will come off for the penultimate round of the season in Barcelona next month. So they may well have timed this about right. They could finish the season really strongly.
It could be all strategy, I think, just to get the weight off. I mean, they did gain 70 kilos between was it Spa and the Red Bull Ring?
Yes.
And then, and that was BOP and compensation weight. They've had 30 kilos back. Maybe that's not enough for them to get back to where they were. But it also could be where the car technically is on pace. That's the point of the system, really. So
yes.
We'll see.
Because we did talk about the Peugeots and the P17, P19, something like that, the best Peugeot in FP1. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of suggesting that the car is maybe perhaps a little bit too heavy, but then we'll see what happens with the weight situation as we get towards the 2 final rounds in Barcelona next month, and then the final round at Monza in October. There is Alex Morgan. We mentioned him earlier on. That's the Mike Halder car, in which Mike finished second, I think, in TCR Germany 2 years ago. I think Michelle has also driven the car. That's Mike's sister, and the pair of them are now having switched to Hondas, so that car is effectively available. It's available for hire, and Alex and his dad Philip have done the deal as an ongoing hire, I think, with a view to moving back possibly to the Renault. We also briefly saw Andreas Beckmann. He was very quick to set a fast lap time in Free Practice 1. He and his sister Jessica tested here in Oschersleben over the winter, and I think even though they tested at all of the circuits that we visit this year, they were saying that they were most pleased, I think, with the results of this test, and so we always kind of expected them to do well here.
Yeah, and Andreas was saying to me just between this session and the last, they quite like this circuit. They've been here, as you say, for testing. They've also been at the kart track here, because they used to be karting before they did rallycross, before they became touring car stars, and where's their career going to go next? I think they kind of like it here. They did compare it. They felt it felt like a TCR UK track. They felt it was a bit like their comparison was to Halton Park. They found some of the elements of it kind of similar, which, I think between us, we're not quite, we don't see that comparison, but we're not in the car, so I'm going to trust him.
There we are. There is Josh Files, our championship leader, and Files, a 2-time winner in the series so far this year, took victory in race 1 at Hockenheim, and then in race 1 at the Red Bull Ring 3 weeks ago. Currently leads the Drivers' Championship. Surprise, surprise, target competition, with 5 cars lead the team standings with a massive, it's nearly 200-point lead that they have. But Files leads by 194 points to Luca Enschler's 158 points in the Drivers' Series. Now, even though we say Brichet is having a torrid time of it, he's still back in third, only 4 points behind Enschler. So Julien Brichet is not out of it, and I know that we have an awful lot of French fans, of Peugeot fans, keeping a very close eye on TCR Europe this year. So who knows what Julien Brichet can do as the season draws to a close. Josh Files then heads up to the start-finish line to clock a lap. We should now start seeing some competitive lap times, a 1:34.232, excuse me, and bearing in mind quickest lap from Urrutia in FP1 was a 1:31. Urrutia having done a 1:32.758. Maxime Potty in the Volkswagen, a 1:32.9. Gilles Magnus, a 1:33.2, so that car now looks to be sorted. Luca Enschler, 1:33.353. Nelson Ponciatici goes P3 with a 1:33.255, so they're all there or thereabouts, aren't they? So we're already into the 1:33s, the 1:32s for Urrutia and Potty, and so we are starting to see some quick lap times being set. Talking to Urrutia, by the way, he said something very interesting. I got the quote from him for the story that's gone out on the TCR website after FP1, and Urrutia was saying, we know the Hondas are always slow in practice and they go quicker in qualifying. What could he possibly mean?
Sandbags at dawn, is that the implication there?
I believe so.
He'll just have to go faster in qualifying himself, wouldn't he?
If only it was that simple. There's one of our new drivers then. Car 67 is the Mira Motorsport Hyundai i30N of I got this wrong before, didn't I? Zsolt Szabo of Hungary.
I think Maxine's just run wide there. Looks like he may have broken something.
Yeah, pulling up. And that's a shame, because he was purple in Sector 1 and fluid coming out of the car, I think we can see in that close-up shot. So he's thumped the underside of the car.
saw him come off the exit at the turn before, went straight way off too wide.
Fingers crossed we can see that as a replay, but you can see that there's something coming out the underside of the car. Oh, quite a bit from what I can see.
It's okay though, maybe he's just getting out of the way and bringing it
And limping back potentially. Here we go.
Just a bit understeer off there in the WRT Volkswagen.
Yeah, did he clout the front as he came back on, I wonder? Yep, there he is. Just coming back on, and it didn't seem as though he went over a curb or anything, but on the close-up shot, there did definitely seem to be something coming out from underneath the car. Let's see now when you see on the just underneath the front splitter.
Yeah.
So whether that was a hold radiator possibly or something, because it seemed to be right at the front.
He to know it pretty quickly though. He pulled straight over. It's
Yeah.
quite a strange sort of.
And a yellow flag at turn 14. So whether Potty has pulled up again.
No.
Oh no, indeed, it's Tamas Tenker in the Zengo car. And in fact, we have a red flag coming out, as you can see in the background, because of the position of Tenker's car. That'll need to be recovered. So a red flag. So the session put on hold. That should be a fairly straightforward recovery for the marshals. He says tempting fate. Unnoticed, while we were looking at Maxime Potty, David Kajaya has gone second quickest with a 1:32.870. So Urrutia has picked up where he left off, quickest so far. Then Kajaya, then Potty, then Ponciatici, then that man Gilles Magnus, who's just coming into the pits. And Luca Engstler, P6. Morbidelli, who we've hardly mentioned, P7. Then Brichet, then Aurélien Comte in another Peugeot, and then Luca Filippi, and that's your top 10 at the moment. And the bonnet is up on Maxime Potty's car. He's still in the car, though, or is he coming? No, he's coming out. So potential damage to something under the bonnet, and I do wonder if it was a damaged radiator, and that was coolant that we saw coming out underneath the car.
It's very Volkswagen Audi Cooper heavy top 10 then. The red flag came out. You got Urrutia, Kajaya, Pozzi, Magnus B5, Morbidelli B7.
Now, who are we expecting? So Josh Files did a 1:34.232 and is in the pits. P13 at the moment. Alex Morgan, P15. Poussier, we haven't mentioned. Sylvain Poussier has taken over the third of the Team Claret Peugeots. So that car has been driven by, amongst others, Stéphane Vontaja at the beginning of the year, and then Gilles Colombani. So this time it is Sylvain Poussier, another Frenchman, of course, taking over the car. The number 77 it is now. Poussier, 41, and has done, like so many others, a lot of Peugeot championships. Has also done the Andros Trophy, but this is his TCR debut. And there is Tenker out of the car and walking back. And we did mention Jolt Sabo earlier, making his debut for Mira in the Hyundai. The car driven up until now by Danny Naj. And chatting to somebody from the Zengo team, they're very good at finding young talent, Zengo, putting them in cars, and then off they go and make their fortune somewhere else. But Zengo, you have to say, have always been very supportive of young Hungarian touring car drivers. And Tamas Tenker is the current pilot, sporting some body damage on the right-hand side of the Cupra. And as I said, fingers crossed, that'll be a nice, easy job for the marshals to recover. And so we should be underway again. And so, in fact, the only two cars out on track, Coronel, that we saw in the background coming into the pits, and Tenker stranded out on track, who will be recovered very shortly. Several drivers not having set competitive lap times: Davidovsky, Jessica Beckman, Dominic Baumann, Matto Homola, Dan Lloyd, Tom Coronel, and Sabo, excuse me, having not set. So they're what, the 148s, 150s, a 2-minute odd for Coronel, having only done one lap. So that's the state we're in. The clock is still ticking down, though. A half-hour session. And it would appear that there's steering damage as well, judging by the angle of that front wheel. So, not sure if we know exactly what Tamas Tenker did in that Cupra, but his session will go no further. Now, Matto Homola, we talked about him the last time TCR was here, was TCR International 2 years ago, and Homola was on the verge of taking a heroic victory for the Opel Astra in race 2 until Gianni Morbidelli just dived up the inside, 2 corners from home on the final lap and took the win and, in fact, the maximum points, the 2 victories and pole position. Hommler, you kind of think it's unfinished business here at Oschersleben, don't you?
Yeah, and he's obviously looking to trying to put his championship back on track as well. He started the season very well in Hungary. It looked like he was going to be walking the season, really, and then it was Josh Files that suddenly took over. We've got some replays here. I wonder if we've got Tamas Stenker's peculiar issue at all. I don't know. Just Maxime breaking his front.
Yeah, I mean, he ran wide there. I'm wondering if it was, rather than the exit here, because it doesn't look as if he ran over anything, I think it was when he went over the rumble strips that he may have done some damage, because there's definitely,
Yeah,
it's coolant, isn't it?
Yeah.
Pouring out.
You can imagine his engineer shouting to him on the radio there, pull over, stop. He must know it straight away.
You good at lip reading?
In French.
Or whichever version of the Belgian areas, because potentially Flemish or French.
I think that's his engineer there, Elliot Hovet, I think.
Yep.
Very much French speaker.
A little way from Matto. No sign as yet when the session will resume. But of the original half an hour, we're now under 19 minutes. Everyone poised to get underway, watching at the end of the circuit, at the end of the pit lane. We would normally get a message on the timing screen to see when the session would resume. Nothing like that at the moment. And so as things stand, Santiago Urrutia in the Audi RS3 LMS is quickest with a 1:32.518. Only 3 drivers breaking the 1:33 barrier so far. Urrutia, Kajaya and Maxime Potti. But as we've been saying, Potti not likely to play any further part in proceedings because of that damage. Nelson Ponciatici in the M Racing Hyundai is P4, Gilles Magnus P5, Luca Engstler P6, Gianni Morbidelli P7, Julien Brichet P8, 9th is Aurelien Comte, 10th is Luca Filippi, Jimmy Claret is 11th, Ollie Kangas in the second of the West Coast Racing Volkswagens is 12th, Josh Files 13th, Teddy Claret in the other Peugeot 308 is 14th, and then Alex Morgan is 15th. Those are the potential top 15 point scoring positions, if that makes sense in the races. But obviously tomorrow it'll all about be the top 12 getting through from Q1 into Q2.
Davidovsky's keen, his own little position there.
Yeah, I'm actually wondering, that may cause him a problem because he shouldn't be in the fast lane. And the race director, Tony Whittaker, was saying in the driver's briefing this morning that you stay in the working lane, which is right outside the pits, and then do not come into the fast lane until the green lights come on at the end of the pit lane. Let's talk briefly about the weather, because that's always a topic of interest. We talked about the first free practice being declared wet, and we did have some raindrops on the outside of our commentary box on the window, but it didn't really play that much of a part. Immediately after free practice, we had a cracking thunderstorm, and it got absolutely soaked here, but now it's dried up again. The forecast for tonight, though, is not good, is it?
No, due a bit of rain tonight, but some drivers are hoping for some rain, some were happy it wasn't happening. I mean, there hasn't actually been a clear wet session apparently this year. It's all been sort of wet, but with slick tyres, so we've never really seen full wet conditions. But tomorrow it's supposed to rain when race 1 is supposed to take place, so it will be useful for some setup purposes to get some wet running in. But yeah, you say the thunderstorm was quite a surprise, and then everyone's thinking, oh, we've got a soaking wet FP2 coming up, and then
it's dried.
It's all gone, no evidence, all soaked up like that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's dried very quickly. But qualifying is tomorrow morning, and then the race is at lunchtime, 1:40 local time at lunchtime tomorrow. So we could potentially see a soaking wet qualifying, and then a drying rest of the morning in time for race 1. So it could potentially be a bit of a lottery. It's the reverse of what we saw in the Red Bull Ring 3 weeks ago, where race 1 was dry and race 2, started damp, but it was declared wet, and then got wetter. So everybody went out on slicks and then got caught out. And as we saw right at the end of the race, where the rain got reasonably heavy, that's when you saw a lot of incidents.
Yeah, and it was Hungary race 2 as well, wasn't it? It was sort of that weird wet but not fully wet, so everyone was still on slicks. Or there's a mix, I think, of slicks. Those who picked wets picked incorrectly in Hungary, and they fell to the back. And we had this very interesting race with Josh Files, if I recall, driving all the way from the back all the way through. Yes,
and also some very sideways moments from Dusan Borkovic, as I seem to remember, because I had Stefano Camini, of all people, sitting where you are now, He was able to say, no, the movement of the car suggests that it's not just the tyres. That car is completely on a dry setup, and so they weren't expecting it to be as bad as this. But that's right at the beginning of the year. It seems an awfully long time ago now. We're already in the second half of the season, and so we've round 9 of the season tomorrow, round 10 on Sunday, and then 2 races at Barcelona next month, 2 races in Monza then complete the series. And you have to say, on current evidence, it would appear that the drivers' battle at least will go down to the wire.
Yeah, and as you were sort of hinting earlier, the Peugeot switch could be quite interesting, because I think Brechet, we may be judging a bit too early on practice, but this doesn't look like it's going to be a great weekend for Peugeot. But if they lose more weight for the next 2 rounds, and with Barcelona and Monza being very much Peugeot Audi type circuits, that could really bring them back in. Whilst this weekend you would expect it's going to favour Honda Hyundai, and to give Files Links the chance to break away a bit more.
But also you see that, I mean, Files turned up in after Spa, had a miserable weekend in Spa, then had a stunning weekend in Red Bull Ring, and now leads the championship again. So it could all be turned around on its head. It's obviously designed to be very close racing. Mrs. Kazaya, hello Mia. There is David, happy so far. Happy to be here, as we said earlier on, having funding issues and budget issues. So at one stage, though, I think there was a question mark over the fact that he might not actually be here at all. But he's not only pleased to be here, but in P2. And that's Urrutia's engineer.
Paul Ridgway.
Yeah, it's Paul on the left of your screen with the glasses. He's a busy man these days. He's in all sorts of championships. Talking to Elliot.
Yeah, he's now effectively, he works for Audi Sport Customer Racing, so he's also Gordon Shedden's engineer in the World Touring Car Cup. He's
clocking up the air miles.
Yeah, he's very much an in-demand engineer. In fact, many are now. This TCR Formula has brought out suddenly a multitude of championships and places for people to work on the cars, which has been a great achievement for the industry.
Was that Coronel Jr. we saw in the background there? I think it was, wasn't it?
So, yeah.
Chip off the old block.
Racing soon enough, probably next year. Be our next youngest TCR winner.
Still no sign of any restart time, which surprises me a little, unless they've got a problem with Tenka's car, or potentially barrier. No, they wouldn't do barrier repairs. We'd have seen that by now, that there was somebody out there.
Well, he must have hit a barrier, because that was it's a very odd position of his car. He must have hit that right side barrier. Would you think they'd extend the session? Because effectively we've only had 2 laps for most cars. Some of them none. It seems.
There's your answer. It's not just a drag off track. It's a full suspended lift. So Tamas Tenka's car's on its way. I do wonder why they didn't just tug it behind the barriers and get on with the session.
It looked like it was nicely behind the barrier.
Yeah. But so I'm a little surprised. Now we hardly saw this car, Abdullah Ali Al Khelaifi's Cupra, the number 96 car. We didn't see much of it in race 1. We just saw a brief glimpse. Now, he didn't do the Red Bull Ring, had the accident, obviously, with Lilo Wadu in Spa, and as a result, or potentially as a long-term consequence of that accident, he's applied for both an engine change and a turbo change this weekend, and applied for both to be as force majeure. In other words, couldn't do anything about it. And he's been granted it for the engine change, but not the turbo change, which is an odd one. But the number of turbos that you're allowed in the regulations, even with the turbo change, he's within that number. So there's no potential penalty. And there's our answer on our timing screen. The restart will be estimated for in about 40 seconds time. So restart at 4:28:30, and we will be running for a new duration of 17 minutes, which is why the clock has disappeared from your screen. So we will get 17 minutes more of this session. That should be confirmed very shortly on your screens, and that will be in something like 15 seconds from now. So we will be underway again for the second free practice session at Oschersleben, as Martin Rieber closes the electric windows.
Yeah, it's one of the best features of TCR technology there.
So you see the engineers now, mechanics, there we are, waving their cars away. So we are back underway. 27 of the 28 cars will contest the shortened remainder then of this, 29:30, excuse me, I misread my screen. So of the cars entered. We are one short. Tamas Tenka ending his free practice 2 in slightly destructive fashion, although fingers crossed the car will be fixed and out for qualifying tomorrow. Didn't seem too bad, certainly compared to some of the damage we've seen so far this year. I'm thinking particularly at Spa.
Yeah, free practice crashes, or you mean like Josh's practice crash?
Josh's crash,
Yeah.
Brichet's crash, you
Yeah.
know, then the team's working through the night to get the cars back out.
Some practice starts going on there.
Yeah. So if you can see on the right of your screen, only free practice 1 and free practice 2 are they allowed practice starts, and there's Gilles Magnus and Poussier. So that's it, the box there on the left-hand side coming out of the pit lane as they see it. That's the only place that you're allowed to do practice starts. And not, obviously, in qualifying tomorrow. Slightly bizarre pit lane exit here in Oschersleben. It goes around to the left and then joins effectively at the exit of turn 1.
A very exciting turn 1. The alternative turn 1, of course, this weekend.
What did we call it? What did I call it? Sweepy swoopy.
Sweepy swervy.
Sweepy swervy, as opposed to the 90-degree left-hand bend that we've seen in previous years, which has normally caused chaos in touring car races. And so they've gone with the more relaxed layout of the left-hander. But then that means that instead of being hard on the brakes for turn 1, they can sweep through turn 1 and then hard on the brakes for the long right-hander at turn 2. The 2M Racing cars, you saw the team management, the all-female team management, although Ivan Muller is here. So we saw a brief shot there, but there are the 2 cars. Nelson Ponciartisi in the number 12 car and Nathan Biel in the 25 car, just behind. Not sure how much of a benefit they're going to get from slipstreaming each other here at Oschersleben, because apart from the long start-finish straight, there is a back straight. It's not that long.
Yeah, it's not one of the slipstreaming tracks. I think they mixed up with the Salzburg ring, I think. No, this one's just, apart from that straight, maybe he's just learning the way around the track. Follow me.
Follow me, I'll show you. Ponciartisi, of course, started the year very strongly at the Hungaro ring. Things have tailed off a little bit for him, as we can also see at the bottom of the screen that Urrutia is clearly on a charge. Purple in sector 1.
Yeah, but Ponciartisi had that last race at Red Bull Ring was actually quite amazing.
That second race, he drove from the back of the grid because he stalled, and he drove through to finish 4th.
Yeah, it was almost unnoticed, that drive, wasn't it? It was just picking his way forwards.
In my defence, Your Honour, there was a lot to talk about.
Yeah. Including with Ponciartisi.
Yes.
Don't get the two confused.
No. Ponciartisi and BL were getting mixed up towards the end. Hommler goes P2, Josh Files goes P3, Beckman goes P1, so the Hyundai striking back, and Beckman under 132. Andreas Beckman does a 131.943 to go quickest of all. Very appropriate for a Swedish driver. The abbreviation is ABBA. So Andreas Beckman then ahead now of Santiago Urrutia, who failed to improve on his time. He did improve, but it was not enough to break the 132 barrier. So Andreas Beckman with a 131.943, Santiago Urrutia a 132.062. So just over 1/10 of a second slower. Then Gianni Morbidelli, then Luca Filippi, who's just popped in P4. Then Matteo Hommler, Josh Files, Julien Brichet, David Kajaya, Dan Lloyd, Nelson Ponciartisi, Maxime Potti, Gilles Magnus, Luca Engstler, Victor Davidovsky, and Ollie Kangas. And all but Coronel now have set competitive lap times. So whether there is Coronel in the background, and that means he's done a 144. So that was an outlap for
non-competitive.
A non-competitive. There we are. Let's take a look at Alex Morgan then.
Oh, spinner.
Oh, Luca Filippi. Yellow flags there, I wonder. No, Filippi underway again as Coronel picked his way through. So there is Josh Files in the number 9 Hyundai, just about to cross the finish line.
Morgan goes fastest.
There's Beckman. Alex Morgan goes quickest of all, 131.666, the number of the beast. So Alex Morgan then clearly sending a message that 3rd place in the Red Bull Ring Race 2 was no fluke. And remember, the car probably knows its own way around here, being a TCR Germany car.
Yeah, they have to pay extra the holders for their setup notes. How do I get around Oschersleben? I need this little piece of paper here.
I'm really, really pleased for Alex, actually. Not only is he a Welshman. Oh, Andreas, what are you doing? But Alex, I think, was quite frustrated in that he was aware that he could perform better. And I think he was being held back a little bit. And I understand that the issue with the Renault is potentially suspension. And, Andreas Beckman just, just very untidy. Gianni Morbidelli improves, 132.167, so still P4 or back to P4 for Gianni Morbidelli. Dan Lloyd moves up to 7th, ahead of Josh Files. Brichet's in the pits, and why is that, I wonder? Routine, currently P9, ahead of Kajaya. There is Aurelien Comte, heading up towards the line. Currently P21, Aurelien Comte. And there is Luca Engstler. Oh, and Martin Rieber's a spinner. I wonder if we've got that as a replay. Martin Rieber in the Brutal Fish car, Dan Lloyd's teammate.
Curiously rolling backwards down towards the racing line there.
Yeah, are we going to see yellow flags there? You'd have thought so.
No power.
That's possibly more than a yellow flag, sadly, isn't it?
There we go.
Oh, there we are. He's underway again. As you were. Now the yellow flags come out. But Martin Rieber is on his way back, I suspect, to the pits. Brichet and Magnus still in at the moment. Alex Morgan, P1 then. We're into the final 10 minutes of this interrupted free practice 2. Alex Morgan from the United Kingdom in the Wolf Power Cupra. The Mike Halder car. Andreas Beckman then in P2, then Santiago Urrutia, then Gianni Morbidelli, then Luca Filippi, then this man, Matto Homola, P6 currently. Then Dan Lloyd in the pits, as is Josh Files, Julien Brichet, David Kajaya and Jessica Beckman. Nelson Ponciartisi is still out there. Just in Sector 2 at the moment. Maxime Potti, I wouldn't have thought will go any further, judging by what we saw earlier on. Then Gilles Magnus we saw in the pits earlier on. Luca Engstler's on his outlap. We saw him leave the pits a moment or two ago. Sylvain Poussier, one of those 3 drivers appearing for the first time this weekend. And Poussier not slowest of all, but only because Tamas Tenka, who we think clouted a barrier or did something, and also Tom Coronel is having a bit of a nightmare session. Coronel's done 3 laps, but his quickest lap is only a 1:44. So after the promise shown by Tom Coronel in free practice 1, where at one stage it looked as though he was going to be quickest in the session, either the car has gone backwards in terms of its setup or they've got a problem.
Yeah, obviously Coronel's 3 laps as in, out, and 1 fast lap,
yeah,
which wasn't that
fast.
Fast. So it's coming with a problem. Slippery surface warning at turns 8 to 10. See anyone off over there?
8 to 10 is through the chicane up to McDonald's. We were looking at that earlier on because some of the turns have got names. Hotel, for example, because that's where we're staying, on the outside of turns 1 and 2. And then the Bauer curve, the Zeppelin curve, Shell curve, Hasserode, and then McDonald's, because apparently there was a delightful smell around last night. There is a factory very close by that makes French fries for the burger chain and apparently supplies most of Europe. So you can imagine the scale of production. Homola over the curbs. Green in sectors 1 and 2. What can Homola do? Certainly slightly untidy as he comes up to the line now. Currently P7. Matto Homola improves to P4. Dominic Baumann, though, P3. Now Baumann, who has made his name in GT3 with Mercedes and BMW cars, has driven here, as we were saying earlier, knows the circuit pretty well, but is very new to TCR. Has tested the car briefly, as you said, I think helped the team at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, the front-wheel drive to rear-wheel drive thing is usually a challenge to take up, but often drivers adapt really quickly. It's the racing usually the challenge for a sports car driver. They usually come down and say, that's a bit heavy. So it's probably not surprising he's finding his pace quite quickly.
But to be fair, he's beaten 132. He's a 131.840, so he is only 17 hundredths off the pace of Alex Morgan. So Morgan still P1, Andreas Beckmann P2, Dominic Baumann P3, Matto Homola P4. So it's target competition, second, third and fourth at the moment. Then Urrutia is fifth. There he is in the 55 Audi. And Gianni Morbidelli, who had such a good weekend here the last time that TCR cars competed, TCR International that is, because of course TCR Germany competes here regularly.
Urrutia's up in the first sector.
Yeah. So Urrutia's gone green in his first sector. Now that should be a green lozenge, not gold. Now, can he top the timesheets in the second free practice? Can he repeat what he did in free practice 1?
See, Magnus is about as quick, so this is the 2 Audis now likely to come forwards.
But he said quite early on they knew that Red Bull Ring would be a bit of a disaster. He was something like P15 in Red Bull Ring. P1 in FP1 here at Oschersleben has done wonders for his confidence and that of the team. He runs up towards the line. What can he do? P5 currently, and no, doesn't improve. Lost it in the third sector. What can Magnus do? Magnus currently P15 in the other Audi. Untidy though over the curbs coming out of turn 14 and across the line for Gilles Magnus, who improves to P3. So let's find out exactly what happened to Maxime Potti. He's down in the pit lane with our man Alfredo Filippone.
Maxime Potti, your session ended earlier than expected. What happened?
Yes, the first lap is good, but after I broken my radiator, and yes, I stopped the session.
Still happy of the car?
Yes, the first lap it's okay, but not with the new tire, but I see tomorrow.
Good luck. Thank you.
So confirmation that it was a radiator. And while we were talking to Maxime, Dan Lloyd has gone quickest with Tom Coronel second. So a repeat of what happened in... Oh, no, and that's Magnus in the barrier. A soft contact, though. He's reversing out. And just as I was about to say that we had a repeat of what we saw in FP1 with Honda's first and second. So it's Dan Lloyd, a 131.495.
Another car involved there is one of the Mira Hyundais as well. So 2 cars off. Slippery surface might have been missed there then.
Yeah. So Lloyd, a 131.495. Coronel, a 131.615. Morgan now down to P3. Andreas Beckmann P4. Gilles Magnus 5. And he's not going to improve on that one. And Urrutia is stopped out on track. So was it Urrutia that was involved? No, surely not. But Urrutia is going... nowhere, it would appear.
If you put a theory together, he may have dropped something in that corner.
Yeah, potentially. Yellow flags waving.
Won't be a repeat of FP1 then?
No, sadly. So just as I was saying, it was good for his confidence. So we are looking there at Magnus going off. Didn't make contact with the barrier, luckily. And it's red flag time. So second red flag of this session with 2.5 minutes or thereabouts remaining. I don't think we're going to restart, bearing in mind that it's a 1.5 minute or so lap time. And with Urrutia stranded where he is, that may well be the end of this second free practice session here at Oschersleben. Things as they stand at the moment then. Dan Lloyd in the Honda quickest. Tom Coronel second, another Honda. Alex Morgan third, Cupra. Andreas Beckmann fourth, Hyundai. Gilles Magnus fifth for Audi. Dominic Baumann, the new guy at target competition, sixth in a Hyundai. Josh Files seventh, another Hyundai. Mato Homola, another Hyundai, in 8th. Then Santiago Urrutia, you saw there, stopped on track, 9th. Gianni Morbidelli, 10th in the Volkswagen. Victor Davidovsky in the Honda is 11th. Luca Filippi, 12th Hyundai. Aurélien Comte, the best of the Peugeots, now P13, so that's better for the Peugeots. Julien Brichet in another 308.14, and confirmation that the session will not restart because of Urrutia stopped out on track. So behind Comte and Brichet, David Kajaya, who was up in the sort of the podium positions, if that makes sense, is 15th at the end of the session, just ahead of Jessica Beckman, 16th, Nelson Ponciatici, 17th, Jimmy Claret, 18th, Maxime Potti, 19th, Abdullah Ali Al-Khelaifi in 20th, in 21st is Nathan Biel, Luca Engstler 22nd, I wonder if he had a problem, Oli Kangas 23rd, 24th is Martin Rieber, Jolt Sabo in 25th, Teddy Claret 26th, Sylvain Poussier in 27th, and then Tamas Tenka, the cause of the first red flag, is bottom of the pile with a best lap of 1:38.008. But in total, 6 drivers beat the 1:32 barrier, with Lloyd a 1:31.495. Let's get confirmation of that. As free practice 2, it is indeed Lloyd, from Coronel, from Morgan, from Beckman, Magnus, Baumann, Files, Homola, Urrutia, and Morbidelli. Surprised?
A little bit. Lloyd's time there is just a 10th away from Gianni Morbidelli's lap record in qualifying from 2 years ago. Obviously, that's a different set of tyres, different brand, that is. So, yeah, it looks like the cars are going to be well into the 130s come tomorrow. I think, obviously...
Dependent on the weather, of course.
Yes, of course. Yeah, I think also you're looking into the...
Okay, let's talk then to the man that was quickest in that session. Alfredo is talking to Dan Lloyd.
Dan Lloyd, the fastest time in free.
You know, with the rain happening as well, we were a bit unsure what was going on. We had a solid FP1 in P3, but to be honest, we changed a lot to the car for the session 2. Everything that we did was a positive. It was just a case of putting a set of tyres on and going and doing a lap. Really happy being P1, but I know there's more to improve for tomorrow. I'm sure everyone else will as well. We've seen it before, but you know, we've had very little running so far today, and everything the Brutal Fish team has done has been really good. So yeah, very happy with that.
Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dan knows all about being quickest in free practice and it all not coming together in qualifying, because that's exactly what happened last time out.
Yeah, indeed. And, yeah, quick in practice and then qualifying doesn't really work out. You noticing also Luca Engstler, same as Josh Files in FP1, only 2 laps there. He's clearly not been out in the session, so...
Okay, then. That was free practice 2 here at Oschersleben, so we are well and truly underway with our coverage of this race weekend. Neil, thank you very much for your company for the 2 free practice sessions. Tomorrow we have qualifying in the morning, we have race 1 at lunchtime, and race 2 is on Sunday at 1:30. Hopefully we'll have the pleasure of your company then.